The Treasury Secretary has to pick up the red phone and call Beijing. He has to say, please do not sell our bonds. In fact, please buy more. Because if China decides to stop buying, or worse, if they decide to liquidate the hundreds of billions of dollars of US debt they already hold, the American system breaks. Interest rates in the US would explode overnight. Mortgage rates would hit 10, 12, 15%. The stock market, which is addicted to cheap money, would collapse. The United States is currently trying to hold a gun to China's head, while China is holding the deed to the United States House. Mr. Bessent knows this. He is a hedge fund manager. He understands leverage. He knows that you cannot declare war on your own banker. So while the news channels talk about how tough the US is being on China, the reality is the opposite. The US is trapped. They need China to fund their deficit, and China knows it. They are watching Mr. Bessent sweat. They know that without their money, the American dream cannot pay its monthly mortgage. When you put these two stories together, Venezuela and China, you see the full picture of the collapse. For 50 years, the American superpower rested on two pillars. Pillar number one was the petrodollar. The deal was, we protect you and you price oil in dollars. That forced every country to hold dollars to buy energy. Venezuela has just proven that you can break that pillar and survive. Pillar number two was the hot treasury bond. The deal was, you give us your savings and we give you a safe return. China is now proving that the return is not safe, and the savings are being weaponized. We are witnessing the end of what the French finance minister Valéry Giscard d'Estaing called the exorbitant privilege. For 80 years, the United States had a magic trick. They could print green paper, and the rest of the world would give them real things in exchange. They printed paper, and Saudi Arabia gave them oil. They printed paper, and China gave them electronics. They printed paper, and Brazil gave them coffee. It was the greatest economic deal in history, but the deal relied on trust. Trust that the dollar was neutral. Trust that the dollar was safe. In 2022, when the US froze Russian reserves, they broke that trust. They told the world, the dollar is not a currency, it is a political leash. And now the consequences are arriving. While Washington runs around trying to put out these fires, the BRICS nations are simply building a new plumbing system. We are seeing a massive shift to the bilateral trade. Brazil is selling food to China in yuan. India is buying oil from Russia in rupees. We are settling our trades without touching the US banking system. The R5 project, real, ruble, rupee, renminbi, rand, is moving from a theory to a necessity. We are not trying to destroy the dollar. The United States is doing a fine job of that by itself. We are simply building a lifeboat. The United States is entering a new phase. I call it the imperial liquidation. They are forced to make deals they hate. They have to tolerate Maduro. They have to tolerate a strong China, not because they have become nicer, but because they have become poorer. The US is not invited to the new table, and for the first time in history, they cannot afford to buy their way in. So, what happens next? The United States government will likely try to save face. They will call the New Deal with Venezuela a humanitarian gesture. They will call the begging mission to China strategic macroeconomic cooperation. But do not be fooled by the headlines. The reality is that the US economy is cornered. They have run out of leverage. When you are an empire, you dictate terms. When you are a debtor, you accept terms. And right now, Washington is accepting terms from the very people it tried to destroy. The United States will eventually have to make a choice between two devastations. They can either default us on their debt, tell the world we cannot pay, which would bankrupt the global financial system instantly, or they can inflate their way out. They can print the money they cannot borrow. They can devalue the dollar to make their massive debt pile seem smaller. History tells us they will choose inflation. It is the politician's way out. It is the slow death. For you, the regular citizen, whether you are watching this in America, in Europe, or in Brazil, this means the price of saving the American empire will be paid by your savings. Your groceries will get more expensive. Your energy bills will rise. This is the tax of the falling hegemon. But there is an alternative. The world is not ending. It is just changing management. The rise of the multipolar world, led by the BRICS, is not a threat to be feared. It is a return to balance. It is a return to sanity. It is a return to an economy based on real resources, not weaponized paper. The unthinkable deals you saw in the news this week are just the beginning. The era of the dollar is closing. The era of the real economy is beginning. My advice to you is simple. Do not listen to what the US politicians say. Watch who they are shaking hands with. Because while they talk about strength, they are shaking hands with the people who hold their debt and their oil. The transition has already happened, the world just hasn't realized it yet.